Get myself comfortable here. You should see the other guy. That's all I have to say. I want to thank you for your comments here this morning. As we reflect back almost 20 years ago on this event that really changed Alaska, it changed our state. 12:04 a.m. on March 24th, 1989, the Exxon Valdez, carrying over 53 million gallons of crude, failed to turn back into the shipping lane after detouring to avoid ice and ran aground on Bly Reef. That's a story that Alaskans just don't forget. I was with my niece this morning. She's 23, and she says, I mean, that happened 20 years ago. She said, I can remember as a child this event and feeling like I needed to get out there with a brush and help clean up those ducks that were the waterfowl that had been damaged. She says, I remember that. That was really 20 years ago. It was really 20 years ago. Alaskans will never forget that morning waking up to hear about the worst oil spill in U.S. history and really then living with the lasting impacts that it has had on our state and our residents. The National Transportation Safety Board investigated the accident, determined the probable causes for the accident, and while it determined that it was primarily caused by human error of the captain and the crew, it's my belief it's also because we had become complacent. It had been 12 years since we'd begun to tanker oil out of Valdez, and there hadn't been an incident. However, when the spill occurred, we became acutely aware of how woefully unprepared we were. The few prevention measures that were available were inadequate, and the spill response and cleanup resources were seriously deficient. The oil eventually fouled some 1,300 miles of shoreline, stretching almost 500 miles, and covered an area of 11,000 square miles. The cleanup eventually employed over 11,000 people and continued to some degree for the next 3 summers. I was looking around the room when the question was asked, how many of you were involved in one way, shape, or form or another with the Exxon Valdez? A lot of Alaskans, a lot of Alaskans. It's difficult to assess the environmental damages caused by the spill. The loss of the seabirds, the marine mammals, the fish are difficult to quantify, but the impacts of the spill, of course, have been studied and researched extensively. One of the surprising results of the long-term monitoring is that after 20 years, there still remains persistent oil, and some of the areas and species impacted are still recovering today. Money from the Exxon Valdez oil spill settlement funded a restoration plan which consists of the monitoring, research, habitat protection, and public information. And this effort has resulted in significant gains in scientific knowledge about the marine environment, the impacted species, and ecosystem research. We know that oil spill prevention and response have greatly improved since 1989. The U.S. Coast Guard now monitors fully laden tankers all the way through Prince William Sound. Specially trained marine pilots ride the ships for 25 of the 70-mile journey through the Sound, and there's weather criteria for safe navigation. Contingency plans, skimmers, dispersants, oil barges, and containment booms are all now readily available. An advanced ice-detecting radar system is also in place to monitor the icebergs that flow off of the mighty Columbia Glacier. Also have 2 escort tugs, which accompany each tanker while passing through the Sound and are capable of assisting the tanker in case of an emergency. This world-class safety system recently saw the 11,000th fully loaded tanker safely escorted through Prince William Sound. This is a tribute to what we have put in place. Congress also enacted legislation requiring all tankers in Prince William Sound to be double-hulled by the year 2015. It's estimated that if the Exxon Valdez would have been double-hulled, the amount of the spill would have been reduced by more than half. Now, while we have made significant progress in spill prevention and response, increased our scientific knowledge of oil spills, cleanup, and environmental monitoring, we simply cannot allow ourselves to become complacent again. The Exxon Valdez oil spill had severe negative impacts, both culturally and economically, on the people who live in Prince William Sound and the areas affected by the spill. 20 years later, The spill and the effects of the ongoing litigation continue to affect the individuals, the communities, and the villages impacted. The 32,000 victims of the spill thought that they would get closure when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on the issue of punitive damages, but instead, the court reduced the damages by 80% and remanded the question of interest back to a lower court. Other impacts include subsistence gathering that has not yet resumed in many areas and commercial fisheries that remain disrupted. Many of the marine species and mammals have not recovered to their previous population levels. It is truly unfortunate, and I think that we would all agree, it is unfortunate that it takes an environmental disaster of this magnitude to enact the kind of preventative measures and responses necessary to keep it from happening again. We must remain ever vigilant to ensure that we are doing everything possible to prevent an accident of this size and scope from happening again. We all know the oft repeated phrase, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. We don't want to be in that situation in Alaska ever again. And I think the commitment that we have made as a state, the commitment that we have made at the federal level will remain true, and we will not repeat the mistakes of the past. Thank you for gathering this morning to I don't know whether we're memorializing the event or commemorating the event, but I appreciate the attention this morning and the focus that you have given as we all work together to make our environment and those that use our resources to keep it safe and sound. Thanks so much.